Morning, everyone. I am opening mics this morning. We just ask that once we open them that you just put yourself on mute so we don't have a whole bunch of people talking. Just give me a few minutes to do that. Kind of silly because I have to do each one by itself.
Hello, Richmond. I love these geographical check-ins. I think that should be mandatory. Hi, Melissa. Hi, Florin. Nice to see you again.
See you? Yeah. See us?
Yeah. Nice for you to see us again. Yeah, so just in case people are confused, Heather and I were submitting the names for our two sessions at the same time, and we were sort of talking to one another, and that was before we had changed things around. So what it looks like you registered for is not actually, it's the same topic, we've just changed the name. So just in case you're wondering, like, what is this? Why are there puppies on the screen? It's going to be okay.
All good.
So it's all good. And we're happy to have Nicole back. We convinced her that she should just be a fixture. No kitty. Oh no kitty. No, I'm sad. And also the reason that Heather's turning your mics on, I mean, we did it every week because we just wanted to give that as an option. And so far nobody's bitten, but today you have to, kind of, maybe, sort of, because we're going to do a flip charting activity. So you're going to actually have to use your words. And we're going to minimize ourselves, so the screen's going to be big. So we really want you to pretend like we're in a classroom and you're just going to fire stuff off and Heather's going to capture it. So that's going to be coming up. So just you can prepare yourself. He steals the meat.
I had a kitty that used to steal asparagus.
That's funny.
Yeah, loved asparagus. And if you brought it home, even in a grocery bag, she could smell it and she would head straight for the bag.
Wow. I dated a guy and I actually saw it in action. Their family had a, what are those big, not a beagle, the other ones with the long ears, they're low to the ground.
Oh, the basset hounds.
Yes. So like big accordion body, right? So they had an island kitchen and it's exactly like that wolfhound with the turkey. That's what he did. And he dragged that thing right off and through the kitchen and there went dinner. It was kind of funny.
Making sure everybody's open here. So far, we have everybody that's attending, so just need to watch and make sure we get more people.
All right. I think we're going to start.
Yes, let's go.
Anybody who joins in after that is totally fine. So welcome back, everybody. We are on session 4, if you can believe that. The time has flown. So in this session, we are going to explore our relationship with food. Oh, refreshing rain. Oh, perfect. We're getting refreshing rain tomorrow. So we're going to take a look at how we relate to food. For some people, it's a true love-hate relationship where there's a lot of guilt and shame, and then they feel bad, and then they do it again, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so we were trying to really capture those images, and I think Heather did a great job in creating this title page, showing that cycle. And it's an unfortunate thing that people get stuck in. So as cute as these pups are, we really want to try to find a way to break that cycle and move towards us being able to have a healthy relationship with food that frees us to be able to enjoy food the way that it was meant to be enjoyed. Not with guilt or shame or anything associated, just delight in whatever it is that we are enjoying in the moment. But as always, before we get started, Nicole, over to you.
Okay. So as always, we have our disclaimer. So the presentation you are about to view is the intellectual property of the Department of National Defense. Any reproduction or retransmission of the slides contained in this presentation is strictly forbidden. Some of the topics discussed in this webinar may be of sensitive nature and may not be appropriate for children. Parental discretion is requested. Please understand that people's stories are theirs alone to tell, and anything that is shared by participants in this webinar, either on camera or in the chat, is not to be discussed outside of this webinar. And this webinar is being recorded and will be available for viewing later on calfconnection.ca. Though active participation is encouraged, you may simply follow along without using the chat or video or microphone options if you prefer. So again, just like we've mentioned before, anything that you put into the chat will not be recorded, but if you do choose to use your microphone today, then that would be recorded and on CAF Connection later on. So
but you might be discovered and you might do voiceovers for cartoons. Who knows?
You know. And then
Okay.
for our first poll, we are going to ask you how you're affiliated with the CAF community.
Great. Awesome. Thank you, guys. So glad you guys are still hanging out with us, even though things are ramping up again. So that's really exciting.
All right. Wonderful. So for those of you who have been with us the whole series so far, this is just a quick review, and it's really quick. And for those of you who are joining, it's just to give you a bit of a sense of the direction that we're taking. So at the very beginning, we looked forward to what we envisioned ourselves in the future. So we viewed our successful future selves. And then we talked about the conversations that we have with ourselves and that are influenced by all the noise that is outside of us that affects what our future and even our present selves feel and look like, and how we sort of deal with those kinds of things going on in our heads. And then last week, we explored the need for the systems that will help us to break down the bad habits. Hopefully, we focused a little bit more on things to do to build a good habit, but the opposite can be applied as well, so that we can choose to start doing things in a lasting way that's going to really help keeping us moving towards or living on the other side of that finish line. So today we're going to go a little bit deeper into the reasons that we eat, beyond just the physiological need for food, which can be every other reason under the sun. And maybe it's something as simple as I only eat chocolate on days that end in Y. You know, so it can be something as broad as that. And for some people, they're like, well, that's not a big deal for me because I don't have an issue with that. And that's awesome. That means that you're one of the lucky ones. You're one of those people that can eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full. And that's awesome. That is actually, it's a gift, but it's also a skill. And it is something that we can sort of work towards learning once we figure out all the other reasons that sometimes we're choosing to eat that don't have anything to do with our physiological need for food. So when we can get to that place, it makes it so much easier because we can go through life without constantly having to fight with ourselves about what or why or how we're eating, and just really fixate on, or not fixate, but just enjoy the moment, enjoy that whatever it is, and separate out some of those other reasons and parse those details a little bit and be able to move forward. So we're going to start by asking this question. And this is where you guys need to put on your thinking caps and be brave. Step to the microphone, people. You can do it.
So you can use your chat, and Carissa will yell them out at me, or you can unmute yourself and just give us some reasons.
And I'm going to just do this, and I'm going to go away, and you can see her screen better.
And Nicole's going to be doing the talking.
Okay, so I want you just to answer that question. So feel free to use your microphone or just use the chat. And so the first one is to live. We eat because we need to live. That's a good reason. Because we're hungry came out. Stress. Absolutely. To gain calories. To fuel activity. That's a great one. And boredom.
You guys are doing awesome. Peer pressure.
Yeah.
Or great aunt or grandma pressure. I think those are
totally. anything else. Really, nobody's going to use the microphone. Creates healthy thinking.
Sorry, what's that?
Creates healthy thinking.
Trent, do you want to elaborate on that one a little?
Yeah.
Like, do you mean when you haven't eaten and you're starting to feel clouded because your blood sugars are low, this helps you to get that boost and you can focus again? Is that where you're going with that?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Okay, couple more. There's a little bit of white space.
Give us.
Maintain blood sugar, sure. Which interestingly is really only a problem if you have either metabolic syndrome or diabetes, because we will maintain our blood sugars much better than we think, because that's what our body is doing. Like, that's when we're starting to tap into different sorts of fuel that our body has access to, right? Like, so fat, for example, it will help.
So energy and boredom came up again. And I see, Heather, you saw upset. Social interaction.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah, how many people miss just going for coffee?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
So I think that's a pretty good list. So we're going to just stop there. So the reason why we're doing this is because identifying why we eat is critical to changing our relationship with food. So as you see, there's lots of reasons why we eat. So anything from the actual physiological or physical need to eat because you're hungry, and that came up as one of the first ones, which is awesome. To anything, to boredom, to cravings, to duress, where, we have our well-intending grandmother or auntie that they just want to feed us because food is love, right? So what we're going to do, and Chris, I guess we can bring ourselves back up here. There we go.
There you go.
So what we're going to do is
I'm going to go to the next
categorize all of the reasons for eating into, there's 3 categories, but I'm actually going to add a 4th category to this. So first, I'm just going to talk about what these symbols represent, and then we're going to go back to that list that you guys came up with and see how they fit within the categories. So the first category would be our stomach hunger, so that plate with the fork and the knife. So as you may think, this is the physical need to eat. So you haven't eaten for 5 to 6 hours, your blood sugars are getting low, or you're just, you're feeling hangry, or you're low in energy and you need to eat. So your stomach is growling, maybe you're getting a headache. So your body's signaling to you that you need to eat something. So you need to eat to feel well and to fuel your body. So that came up a couple times on that list. With the mouth, so what that is representing to is it's mouth hunger. So you're craving a specific food. So you're standing in front of the fridge or your cupboard and you're looking for something with a specific taste or texture, and nothing else is going to satisfy that craving other than that specific food. So maybe you might think salty, crunchy chips, for example. So maybe you eat carrots or crackers or, a bunch of other things, but it's not until you eat that one food that you actually feel satisfied. Or cold, creamy ice cream would be another example of that. So it's a specific taste that you're looking for. With the heart, so as you may think, it's that emotional part. So you're eating because of the emotions that you're experiencing, how you feel mentally. So that would be the boredom, feeling upset, things like that. And this is also going to refer to those learned behaviors that we have around food too. So for example, I always eat dessert after supper. So that could be that learned behavior over time, even though maybe you've had a big meal and you're not hungry, dessert is always part of that meal, so that's just what you're going to do. Or it's time to eat. So maybe it's 12 o'clock. I always eat lunch at 12 o'clock. I'm not necessarily hungry, but it's just because that's what I've always done. So it's just that learned behavior. Now, the fourth one that's not pictured here, but when we go through the list, we're going to use a tree for environmental. So yeah, the tree there.
I don't know where am I.
So the environmental trigger would be the things around us that would influence or trigger us to eat. So that could be if you're walking through a mall and you walk by a food court and you smell the food and maybe that triggers hunger. Or the people that you're with, right? That maybe they have food and that, oh, it looks good, I'm going to have some too. Or maybe you work in an environment where there's a candy dish and you have to walk past that candy dish multiple times a day. And then eventually you have some candy because it's there. So those would be those environmental triggers. So what we're going to do now is just go back to that list, and Heather is just going to read off those items, and then we'll categorize each one and see how they fit with these types of hunger.
Okay. The first
so
one
to live,
says
that's
to live.
pretty easy. What do you guys think? The plate. Yes.
Plate. Good job, Lauren.
The plate, yeah.
Stomach hunger.
Probably this.
Hunger,
And
again,
then hunger,
no-brainer, it's the plate.
Which,
stress.
Yeah, I'll just leave it there. Okay, and then the next one, stress.
The heart, yeah, absolutely.
To gain calories.
I think that's a tricky one.
It is, yeah.
Oh,
It
yeah,
is.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Depends, right?
Plate and heart. Yes.
The heart.
Good job, you guys.
Right?
Yeah, because these aren't always going to just be in one category. There's going to be some overlap.
Yep.
To fuel.
Yeah. To fuel your activity.
Plate, yeah.
Boredom.
Heart, yeah. Heart and plate, yeah.
Oh, Trent, you're on fire.
Okay. What about mouth? I think when
Look
I'm
for a
bored,
specific food.
Yeah,
about
true.
mouth
Like
hunger
the,
too.
it's time for, I'm
Yeah.
bored. Popcorn.
Because I don't go to the fridge and get an apple when I'm bored.
Yeah.
It's potato chips or something that I shouldn't be eating, right? Peer pressure, grandma pressure.
Food enter through the mouth.
Potentially mouth, sure. Could
And also the one that's not pictured here would be the environmental. So for that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking.
Yeah.
Okay. Creates healthy thinking and maintains your blood pressure and blood sugar.
Plate. Yeah, I agree there. Yeah.
Okay. And somebody said tree. Okay. And I wrote upset, but I also wrote sad, glad, mad. Because I think we eat for all of those reasons.
Mhm.
So I'm going to give that several hearts.
Yeah.
Sad, glad, and mad. Social interaction.
Too much love.
Heart and tree.
Yeah.
Yeah, good, Rhonda.
Heart and
Yeah.
tree.
Oh, mouth and tree. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. I think of when I'm out for dinner, especially going back to the days when my son was young, and I would order something for myself. And you're out and you're being social and you're talking and the food is still lingering, and I would reach over and eat the French fries off my son's plate when I wasn't really hungry, but they were still sort of there. And I think that that's sort of where maybe some of that mouth hunger comes from.
That's what I do on purpose. I don't order the fries. I just eat somebody else's.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Can I have 4 of your fries, right? It's
Only
portion
4.
control.
That's good.
Well, it usually turns it to 10.
That was awesome, you guys.
Yeah,
It's
it's a great
so good.
list. So now looking at all those symbols that Heather has up there, which type of hunger are we seeing more often? And I know Heather put up some extra hearts for the upset, but typically that's what we're going to see, right? Is more of those maybe emotionally driven or the learned behaviors. We see lots of those forks up there, which is great. But what this is telling us, again, is that there are many triggers that influence us to eat. So it only takes a couple seconds before we take a bite of food or take a drink of something to think about, what type of hunger is this? What's driving this? Am I actually hungry right now? I need to fuel my body because I'm going out for a run or something like that. Am I craving something specific? So that's why I'm going for that salty potato chip, because I want that crunch. I want that saltiness. Am I just having a bad day and I feel anxious, and so I'm trying to fill a void that way? Or it's a really hot day and the ice cream truck is driving by and I have a few bucks, so I'm going to run out and get an ice cream. So that would be that environment. So again, it's just not to say that it's wrong to do that, but just to be aware, especially if it becomes a pattern or a problem, to start thinking about those relationships, because that's really where we need to start.
And what it comes down to is that people inherently know what they should eat. They may not know the food science like Nicole and Carissa with their dietetics backgrounds, but we typically know what is good for us in terms of nutrition and what is less healthy. So when we think about food, we know that eating an entire bucket of KFC or downing an entire McCain's chocolate cake in one sitting is not particularly wholesome or nutritious for us. But rather those items should be considered more of a treat or a special event type of thing. So what we're talking about in the whole series, and especially in today, is recognizing that, we know that weight and weight gain is a very complex and multifaceted issue, and that there's more to it than just the topic that we're discussing. We know that there are physiological reasons why people gain weight as well, but that is not what we are focusing on. And we're not trying to downplay those things, but we're trying to take a look at the other side of that. So when we think about all of those non-food reasons why we eat, all of those hearts and those emotions and those mouths that we see up there, those things are often more challenging for us to overcome in the long term than the physiological stuff is. And it's only once we address some of those underlying reasons why we're choosing to eat that the nutrition facts and the diet tips and all of those strategies can actually be effective for us. Because if we haven't dealt with the root issue, then all of those things will only last for so long before we sort of give in to the willpower, shall you say, that we've been using. And as you can see by the flip chart that we did, many of us don't really think about the role that food is playing for us. We just sort of go and get it and then maybe are feeling guilty later, but we're not thinking about it all the time. So we have to recognize that there's a lot of reasons, as Nicole said, why we're choosing to eat that aren't about satisfying hunger. And as Nicole said, we're not saying those things are bad, but it's about really taking the time to consider what it is that I'm choosing to do in this moment. Am I choosing to eat because I'm hungry, or am I choosing to eat because of another reason?
So when we think about that, you might remember from session 1 that we were talking about the 4 influencers that sort of predicate the ability to maintain meaningful change. So we looked at the why do I want to change anything in my life right now? If there's something that's making us think that we need to change, it's because something is uncomfortable, something's not sitting right. There's some kind of motivation as to why we want to do something different than what we're doing now. So we have to understand what those are. And we talked about those a little bit in terms of the influences from society and stuff, as well as our own internal pressures. The how, was kind of, what are those steps? What are those systems that you're going to put in place? What are you doing right now? What's working well? What might you want to try to do? So those were the hows. And we sort of touched upon, but we didn't really spend a lot of time considering the other two, which are fear, which we talked about it being the fear of both failure as well as the fear of success. What happens if I get to where I want to be? How am I going to maintain that? Is it realistic? What do I have to continue to give up if that's what you feel that you had to do to get there? When I reach that goal, is there still a fear that there still may not be acceptance, that there still may not be a sense of belonging, that there's still not going to be the recognition of all the hard work that went into that? So those fears are things that often motivate us, sometimes in a good way and sometimes in a not so good way. And then there's the other things that are the needs. So that's the cloud at the bottom with all the stuff that we as human beings need. And in our communication webinar, we talked about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so we're talking about just your basics of, food, shelter, clothing, those kinds of things. But we're also talking about stuff like recognition, importance, appreciation, freedom, understanding, all kinds of things that we don't necessarily associate with food. But when the needs that we have as human beings, and those are a little bit different now, perhaps, than, 3 months ago, because now I need to know that things are one day going to go back to normal. I need to know that we're going to be okay. I need some reassurance. I need some comfort. I need some concrete plans. Those are things that maybe we didn't think about before, but they're needs that we have. And if they're not being met, how are we filling those? Some people fill those with things like alcohol or drugs. And while a person can say, well, I'm not going to go to the liquor store, a person can't say, I'm not going to go to the grocery store. So we can't not do those things. We still have to always have the foods available to us. So how do those needs translate into what we might be doing if somewhere along the line we're not having those needs met for ourselves? What are we using in place of that? So we need to just recognize those and understand those other pieces. So the things that we're craving perhaps lead to us finally admitting to ourselves that there's maybe something going on and that we now can start to address those things a little bit better. So if you think about even just post-injury, if you had an injury, likely you're going to be eating significantly different while you're training as opposed to now that you're not. And if you haven't changed that, well, something is going to give, right? Like, so either you're eating too many calories for the amount of energy that you're now expending, or you've switched what you're eating because you no longer feel you have to be as puritanical in the choices that you're making. And that is certainly something that a lot of people do. We hear it all the time in Top Fuel for Top Performance. So what is it that you're trying to do? What are you trying to overcome or maintain? What are your fears when you're injured? I fear never getting back to the level of health or fitness that I was at before. I fear being stuck in this new identity forever, and I don't know that I can live with that. I fear what this is going to mean for my future and my career in the military. So there's some of those kinds of things. I need to feel like I'm doing something meaningful, even though I'm not able to train right now. Right? So maybe you're a great baker and you know that your family loves cinnamon buns, so you're injured, but you can still bake. So you're making these cinnamon buns, but the cinnamon buns are now sitting on the counter and they're like, these are good cinnamon buns. You need to have one or 6. So, we need to kind of recognize that sometimes that happens. Retirement. I know that somebody had mentioned way back when that retirement was on the imminent horizon for them. So you don't want to be one of those people who looked so forward to retirement, but then didn't really think about what that was going to look like on the other side. And now you're sitting around going, so I have no schedule, I have no routine, I have no expectations of me. Nobody cares whether I wake up and put pants on or not. What am I going to do to fill my day and still feel like I've done something meaningful? The first little while is a bit of a honeymoon period. You're happy to not be doing any of that. But Heather and Nicole, when they did the training in this Craving Change program, one of the participants had said, like in the training video, that he had to now lose 30 pounds of boredom. He gained 30 pounds because of boredom. So you don't want to be in that position. So you need to have a plan so that you can move into that new next chapter of your life with, that same kind of sense of structure and purpose and routine that you were missing before. So can anybody think of any other situation that might fit into that is either something that once was or once needs to be, or anything at all? Like, what else can you see fits into that whole notion of why, how, fears, and needs? that we as human beings sometimes struggle with. Crickets? Nothing? That's okay. So Nicole has an activity that she wants to run through with you about, kind of building into and leading into a video that we're going to watch in a minute.
Okay, so if you have a pen and paper, I want you to grab that. And what I want you to do is think about the times that you have a bad day. We all have bad days or bad moments in the day. You feel stretched to the limit, or you've had an upsetting conversation with someone and you just don't feel really that great. So I want you to think or write down all the ways that you would comfort yourself after that situation. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds and write down as many things as you can think of that you do just to make yourself feel better.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, and feel free to, if you don't have pen and paper, just put it in the chat. So that's good too, so we can see.
Yeah, like, and we can pretend it's in like non-COVID stuff. Oh, gaming, okay. Yeah, my daughter'd be all over that.
Drawing, that's great. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Music.
Nice.
Watching TV, eat, drink, go for a walk, walks. That's great. Yep. Okay, so that was about 30 seconds.
ACDC.
Step away, go for a walk with the dog. ACDC blasting in the headphones. Cuddle with my kids' dog. Eat chocolate chips. Walk in nature. Talk to a friend. Yeah. So that's awesome. And sometimes what we notice when we do this kind of activity, sometimes we get stuck. Sometimes there's only 2 or 3 things on our list, right? So starting to think about what kinds of things we can do to comfort ourselves. What I want you to now looking at that list that you have, it's actually pretty good. What I was going to get you to do is cross off anything that requires you or involves eating or food. So there's only a couple of times that it comes up, but there's a lot of other things that don't involve food. The other thing I was going to get you to think about is anything that's dependent on other people. Not to say that we don't need social support. We absolutely need to have that. But if we're always relying on the same person, and if that person isn't there, then that could be a problem. So just thinking outside of the box in that way. And the other thing I wanted you to consider too, if there's anything that involves spending a lot of money. So I'm not seeing a whole lot on this list that involves money, which is great. It's things that you can just do. So really, we're all going to face difficult situations. It's part of life. We're going to have negative feelings that come and go in a day or in a week. And a lot of the time, we know how to comfort a child or to comfort someone else. But when it comes to ourselves as adults, sometimes that's a little bit harder, right? So we might automatically go to food to comfort ourselves, or we might go to spending more money than we would like to, but that's going to maybe make us feel better in the short term. Or maybe it's crashing in front of the TV. Or maybe it's using a substance like alcohol or cigarettes to help in that short term, but in the long term isn't helping us. So it's going to this list that you guys came up with, and we're going to look at a list in a little bit with more ideas. But it's doing those things that instead of nourishing ourselves in those situations, actually nurturing ourselves. So it's a great job. You guys did really awesome.
All right, so we're now going to watch a video called Why We Eat Too Much.
Nicole, so that we have a little bit larger screen for you.
Heather, do you want to actually share it because it's saying, yeah, there you go. I was messing with you.
Oh, where am I? Why can't I find it? Okay, there we go. Oh, now it's saying you're already sharing it, so hopefully that's going to work.
It's clear that a great many of us eat too much, and in response, a huge industry has grown up which advises us to consume more quinoa, pomegranate, and fennel salad.
Is everybody hearing it double?
Twice, yes. I think it's because you shared it too.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. So Heather, you try.
Yep.
It's clear that a great many of us eat too much, and in response, a huge industry has grown up which advises us to consume more quinoa, pomegranate, and fennel salad, and, as often as we can, kale and apple soup. But this is entirely to misunderstand why we start eating excessive amounts. It has nothing to do with food, and therefore trying to change our diet isn't the most logical place to focus our effort.
What just happened, Carissa?
We eat too much because what we're really hungry for isn't available. Of course, it looks as if everything we could want should be to have. Our supermarkets and delis are iconic temples of consumer society. Our restaurants spare no effort trying to satisfy. Could Sir or Madam be tempted by lobster thermidor or a selection of regional vegetables drizzled with olive oil sourced from a tiny farm in the Pyrenees? It sounds nice, but if we could really choose anything, wouldn't we want a slightly different menu? For example, unstressed conversation of father, marinated in mutual forgiveness. Tenderized maternal love, suitable for those on a criticism-free diet. The right friendship, served on rye banter, accompanied by a side serving of affectionate teasing. Fresh conversation, liberally sprinkled with poignant anecdotes for two. Sexual appreciation with all the trimmings. Our sommelier recommends, as the ideal accompaniment, a glass of full-bodied Chateau Fantaisie. And for dessert, perhaps, a generous scoop of honeyed insight. In other words, it isn't food we crave. The menus of our actual restaurants, however chic, prompt us only in very limited and restricted directions. They understand and respond to only a desperately narrow segment of our true appetites. Collectively, we speak so much of food and so little of what we properly need. It isn't pizza, Spanish cheese, or Argentinian steak. We need friendship, where we can confess our darkest anxieties and be heard and forgiven. We need help in calming down at key moments, reassured that we can withstand the very worst that may be coming our way. We are lonely and angry within our own families and are crying out for redemption and cathartic honesty. We need someone who can help us discover our real talents in the workplace and offer us a guide to realize our true potential. We know that when reaching for a tube of potato chips or biting into yet another burrito, that the problem doesn't lie there. We just don't know where else to turn, and there is at least a short-term satisfaction to be found. We eat too much because we hate ourselves too much to do ourselves the honor of looking after our bodies. Our tragedy isn't our unconstrained appetite, but rather the difficulty we have in getting access to the emotional and psychological.
All right. Okay, so sorry about that, everyone. Chris has put the YouTube station on the side so that you can watch it later if you'd like. We won't hold you up watching it. There was one quote that I really loved, and I don't know if they got to it on there, but they said, "We speak so much of food and so little of what we really need." And I really think that that is true for many of us. Most of us just don't know where to go or what to do when it comes to dealing with a lot of those things that are not food related. And when we think about what we truly need, and they say it close to the end of the video, it's understanding, tenderness, forgiveness, reconciliation, and closeness. And those are the things that we really, truly need a lot of times when we are eating things. But none of those things are found in our refrigerator.
Okay, so this is wrap up that activity that I had you guys do, where you came up with all the different ways of nurturing yourself. So just to give you some more ideas, but really you guys, I think, hit a lot of these already. So that's great. The idea, so we want to look at what do we really need in that situation, right? So if it's, we've had a crummy day, it's not a Big Mac, a chocolate shake, a piece of pie. That's not what we truly need in that situation. But it's what those things represent for us. So we're looking for maybe love, acceptance, comfort. So we need to think about seeking those things rather than the food that's not giving us what we need in those situations.
So, of course, we have, I suppose I should do this again. Of course, for you if you want to do it. And Heather, I can see by the intent look of concentration on her face is uploading them for you right now. There's 2 of them. And the 2 are, of course, again, about self-reflection, which is honestly one of the best and only ways that we can ever start to move beyond where we are right now. We need to get a real good sense of what's happening right now so that we can decide if this is working for us or if we need to discard it or if it's something that we need to use as a motivation to start looking at something else. So the first one is designed to help you to identify those 3 kinds of hunger that we just spent some time looking at and how you have experienced those in the past. Can you remember the last time that you were super plate hungry, where you were ready to like eat your own arm? If you don't remember the last time you felt that way, that in and of itself might be something worth investigating. If you are afraid of ever letting yourself get that hungry, maybe why is that? Maybe that's something that needs a little bit more retrospection or some self-reflection. And the other piece is a list of reasons why a person might choose to eat. So Heather's got a really awesome journal for you next week to do. And we've just literally been trying to warm you up to that because it's it's now a 10-pager because I said, can you add a cover page and a back page? So it's a 10-page handout. And so you might find the second handout useful for when you are starting to look at that particular handout next week as to why it is that you're eating in that moment, because sometimes we need a little bit of prodding. We need a little bit of like, oh yeah, that's actually why I did that, because it's hard for us to sometimes step over that thing that's keeping us from admitting some stuff. Like we like being in the big river called denial. So we need to sometimes have a little bit of a motivation to get out of there. So one of the things to remember is that even if you don't have a weight problem, you might have a food problem. There's a lot of really fit, lean people who have some very, very disturbed eating patterns and ways of looking at food. So we need to just recognize that there's all kinds of reasons why a person might be struggling with food, even if weight isn't the primary reason behind why that is. And all the stuff that is associated with that, the guilt, the shame, the embarrassment, it's still all there, but for a different reason. It's as much of a sense of failure when they let themselves get to that place as it is for someone who's like so desperately trying to lose that, last 10 pounds or that first 10 pounds. It's all linked to how we are feeling inside of ourselves and that acceptance that we have. So don't think that just because the scale shows a good number that you're off the hook on this one. We've got a lot of people who have a lot of work to do, and we see that in Top Fuel for Top Performance all the time. The other thing that I want you guys to keep in mind is that men have just as many body image issues as women do. And it's different. It manifests itself differently, but they're still there. And those ones, a lot of the time, are performance related or have a lot of puritanical, moralistic judgment attached to them. not to the people, but to the food. And there becomes this notion of, if I eat kale, kale is a superior food to donuts. So as a kale eating person, I am therefore better than a donut eating person. And if you don't think that that's true, then you need to come and hear some of the conversations that we have with people in Top Fuel, not just Way Wellness, who have a very definitive perspective of what is a good food and what is a bad food, even though the messaging that we've been trying to give for a long, long time is that we can make all kinds of choices and they all can be healthy choices. We just can't start affixing a moral judgment to the type of food that we are deciding to eat or to not eat. So what these activities are designed to do are just ways to help you to hold yourself accountable, to get a better sense of what's going on with you, and to be able to move forward from that so that you can be that person on the other side of the finish line, whatever your goals are that you might be working towards.
Okay. So our takeaways for today, try to reflect on the type of hunger you might be experiencing. So as difficult as it might be to be aware of all of our behaviors, especially those that are intricately connected to habits and to ritual, if you think about things like watching a movie, you might always connect that to having some kind of a snack food with you. If you're going to an event where your family is gathered, there's always going to be food that's sort of attached to that. Or even the behavior of when a commercial comes on, you might be that person that runs to the pantry. Those are all sort of ritualistic and habitual behaviors. We're not saying any of those are inherently wrong. What we are asking you to consider is thinking about, why am I choosing to do this right now? Trying to be purposeful in recognizing why you're choosing to eat something in that moment. Is it because it's lunchtime that you're having lunch, but maybe you had a bigger snack in the morning that you didn't plan for and you're not actually hungry, but it's 12 o'clock and so you need to eat? So it's thinking about some of those pieces. We have to remember that it isn't always about the food. It's not always about the nutrition part of it when we think about food. It's attached to a whole lot of other things, and it's usually connections to human beings, connections to others. We think about family gatherings, we think about traditions that we have, memories of picnics or things that we did with our family members that come back to us when we eat certain foods, maybe special family recipes that are close to our hearts, things like that. We might associate having ice cream with being outside with our family in the summertime. We need to let go, as Carissa said, of the idea that a food is good or bad, and that we are good or bad for having eaten that food. We need to be able to get to a place where we can enjoy the food, no matter what it is. If we're choosing to have ice cream or we're choosing to have that chocolate, that we're truly enjoying it. We're not saying, I'm going to eat a bad food right now. I'm going to eat chocolate right now, and I'm going to enjoy that chocolate. And I'm not going to have any shame or guilt attached to eating that chocolate. That's where we want people to end up being, so that they can have all of those foods that are available to us and be able to enjoy them and still manage to get ourselves to that finish line we talked about on the first week. We all have emotions that are attached to something. It could be past memories. It could be recent events that are going on for us that are causing us to have maybe, let's say, some scars on our lives. And some of us might be choosing to soothe those scars or soothe those hurts with food. And that's okay sometimes. It's knowing whether you're doing that all the time and it's impacting your ability to get to that finish line you have in your mind. If you can do that sometimes, and I think we all do at some points in our lives, make those decisions, and it's not impacting getting to the finish line, then it's okay. But if you're now doing it so frequently that it's impacting who you want to be or where you want to go, then that's when we need to consider looking at changing those things. So we want you to be able to find a more productive and healthy way, as Nicole had mentioned, all of those nurturing techniques to deal with some of those hurts that you might be dealing with in your life other than just food. Okay, so it's okay to have reasons other than hunger, but we need to be able to do so knowing that it is what we are doing and knowing that it is something that we do, isn't something that we do all the time. Okay?
And I would like just to add one thing before Heather does the resources,
Sure.
is that especially with respect to point 2, in terms of the comments that were made about separating, food being good and food being bad and stuff. That's why we, all 3 of us, really have a significant issue with the notion of a cheat day. Because all that does is reinforce the notion that you are cheating, which means you are doing something bad, which means you are choosing a bad food on that day. And that's what we're trying to get away from. If you want to eat whatever that food is, eat it. Just acknowledge that you want to have it and that it's delicious and it's okay. There is a girl that I was friends with on Facebook, and she was doing one of those fitness modeling things. And so she was posting pictures of her progress and whatever. And every single post included hashtag wish I could have pizza, hashtag carbs are my life, hashtag why can't I have a cookie, hashtag, right? It was all about the stuff that she couldn't have because it was bad. And she had to wait until she got to this point that met some kind of criteria that was being, she was in this competition. So I just really caution people, do everything you can to be that person, enter that competition, but know that you are not good or bad based on the choices of food that you're making. If it is because you need to do these things because your coach, for whatever reason, is telling you that you can't have these foods in this period of time, know that it is a short-term thing with hopefully some short-term gain that's going to translate into some kind of longer-term sense of pride and accomplishment and achievement that's going to keep you moving forward. So just something else to consider, because it's another thing we hear a lot of. So sorry, Heather, didn't mean to hijack you there.
No, that's okay. I like it. So we just wanted to talk about, when we're talking about resources, that bearing in mind everything that health promotion does is not intended to be therapy for anyone. It's intended to create more awareness for you. And if you, in hearing some of the things that we've talked about, it's resonating with you and you recognize that maybe there's something going on for you, I think it's really important to consider reaching out for the extra help that might help you to get where you want to be. A 30-minute webinar is not going to change or solve a whole lot of things going on in your life. What it hopefully is going to do is help you to see that maybe there's something larger there that needs to be addressed. And that's where a lot of these resources can come in, using your SIF map, using your EAP if you're a civilian employee, but really consider reaching out and using those tools that are available to you so that it doesn't become just something that you heard and it went away the next week and it didn't get you anywhere.
All right, so for our last 2 polls, like always, we'll get you to answer the next 2. So I feel I can apply what I learned today in my daily living.
And just on that note, before we get to the next question, what we're hoping, we don't have a poll question, we have no real way of gathering that information, but we're just wondering, and I know Ottawa is working on sort of updating these poll questions because we've been asking the same ones now for some time, and maybe you can just throw the ideas in the chat if you have them. We have 2 questions. One is, what are the timings that work best for you? And what are topics that you have been looking for and haven't found? So if you want to throw those in the chat, that would be super helpful for us. And if you don't have any ideas, that's okay too, because no pressure.
Evening, okay.
Okay. Yeah, we had thought about evening, Florence, so thank you. I know as people are starting to ramp up that maybe some of these things need to be moved to off hours, which I think is perfectly fine for us. We've always worked all kinds of odd hours for health promotion, so yeah. Okay, so that's really good to hear. So that was what our thinking was, so we're glad to have it confirmed for us so we know what to do moving forward.
And that's not to say there are going to not be any in the day, Krenza, right? Like we're going to try to figure out a way that we can try to make as many people happy as possible. And obviously, oh, okay, good. All right. Whew. Okay, good. All right. Thanks, guys. And topics that you were missing? Sorry.
Oops.
I'm a follower. Okay, no idea. Okay, that's okay. That's great. That means that we've done a good job. I mean, not the three of us. I mean, of course we have, but.
And if you don't feel like sharing, but there is something that you have in mind or you think of, you can always go to our health promotion site, which is Edmonton Garrison Health Promotion, and send us a private message if you'd prefer to send a private message that way.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Thanks, guys. All right, and the last one.
Yeah, so again, with the Demio platform, you're happy with it, not happy with it?
And here again, just if you have had experience with other platforms that you liked or had some better features, one of our challenges, of course, is having them that mesh with both the D1 and the CFMWS networks. So if you have any that you have worked with successfully, maybe throw those in the chat as well, and we can forward those to Ottawa as we kind of move forward from here. So any information that you guys have, because we're learning too, right? This has been a learning experience for everybody. Okay.
Okay, thank you everybody for joining us. Thanks for participating. It's great when we can get some involvement going. I know it's a little bit different than a classroom, but we're doing the best we can.
And you guys are awesome. Although one day before the end, before session 6, somebody must speak.
I want to hear them talk.
Oh, ways for self-care.
Ways for self-care. Okay, chances are in some of the stress ones, Karenza, but we'll definitely keep it in mind as a solitary topic moving forward that we could talk about. Nicole will write it down for us. She's totally on that. She's the mother of 2 little ones at home, so that's definitely high on her list.
High on her list of things to do, low on the list of things that get achieved.
Yeah.
Yes.
Excellent. Awesome. All right. Thank you. We will enjoy the sunshine. You enjoy whatever you happen to be experiencing, because you know that rainbows only come after rain. So I just had to throw that cheesy thing in.
Oh dear. All right. I think that there's a few people that like to take a screenshot, so I guess we should shut ourselves off so they can do so. Well, we try to entertain you, Lisa. Okay, bye-bye, everyone.